I sent you a card in the hospital. Do you remember? Yeah, sure, Joe. I do. I do.
You're right.
Yeah, whatever you say, Joe.
Sports and music are staples of the American experience, ingrained in our culture and in our souls. Our guest today is Johnny Holliday, the legendary DJ and sportscaster who's not only enshrined in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but Washington, D.C.'s Sports Hall of Fame, for calling it like he sees it with that unique blend of pizzazz and humanity. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
We will make America strong again.
We will get through this together.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
So, Johnny, it's wonderful to have you on the show. When we were thinking about how to put this together, I said, well, this is going to have to be like a 37-part series because your life lends itself to like war and peace, right? But we're really happy you're here. There's so much to talk about. Justin, take it away.
Well, Johnny, it's great to talk to you. Your career has taken you so many different places, but I want to start at the beginning. My hometown is Miami, Florida.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
You were born there. You
Yes,
graduated
I was, yeah.
from North Miami High School.
Yeah.
Has a number of other illustrious graduates as well. Tell us about growing up in Miami and graduating from, I think, one of the earliest, if not the first graduating class from North Miami High.
It was North Miami High School in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off as Edward L. Constance. We'd gone to junior high school at Bryan, I think it was, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Then they added a 10th grade on, and the 11th grade and the 12th grade. So we were the first graduating class at North Miami. Everything we did was a school record. So I always talk about I'm the record setter in basketball, in baseball, the first no-hitter, in basketball, the most points, in football, the first touchdown in the history of the school, which the record stood for about a year. And that was about it. Because somebody else would come along and, break it.
But you had the record.
But it was a great time. There were probably 6 or 7 high schools in Miami at that time. Now there's probably 167.
Right.
It was just a great time. There was no pressure on kids growing up. There was no internet, no cell, nothing, none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make a call, you pulled off the road and went to a pay station and put a dime in. And my best friends right now are still my high school friends that I grew up with from like 7th grade. Mm. And out of our class at North Miami, that first graduating class, was a guy named Sal Licata. Sal became president of RCA Records, Sony Music Corporation, EMI America, Blue Thumb, Chrysalis, without a college education.
Remarkable.
He was the first baseman, and he and I were the guards in basketball. Another North Miami graduate, Paul Gleason. Gleason, the name you may not know, but he went on to be the principal, Mr. Vernon, in The Breakfast Club. He was in Die Hard with Bruce Willis. He was major star. A lot of people came out of North Miami. Steve Carlton, the pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies. Mm-hmm. So it was just a great time with tremendous teachers that were major influence on us as students. I wanted to be like Mr. Clark, who was my baseball coach, defensive backfield coach in football. I wanted to be just like him because he came to school with a pair of khakis, Chuck Taylor low-cut black Converse, white T-shirt with a whistle, and a cap, okay? And he coached, and he had study hall. Then he sat in the lunchroom for lunchtime. I wanted to be just like Mr. Well, easy job, right?
I thought that's how you turned out.
Right.
Something I'm not seeing here. Let's go back to the beginning in Miami. It's where you got your start in radio. As I remember reading, it was in R&B. So you popularized, top 40. You were one of those early titans that made top 40 so big. But it was R&B that you got your start. Interesting.
Well, my first job was in Perry, Georgia, okay? And I lucked into broadcasting strictly by accident. I was up there. My grandfather called me. I was working in a parts department in a Chevrolet company. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had delivered windows for a window company. I worked at a men's store. I was like just kind of floundering. I had no idea. So my grandfather calls me and says, why don't you come up here to Unadilla, work in my drugstore, and there's a little semi-pro baseball league we have here in Middle Georgia, and you can pitch for the Unadilla team. And I'll give you $40 a week.
Now, this is because you had been a Hall of Famer from your high school.
No.
When you were,
not at
they
all.
heard the reputation,
record
right?
holder.
Record holder.
Yeah. So I go up there and I'm working there for maybe a month. And the guy from the local radio station was in my grandfather's store trying to sell him some commercial time and said, I want you to meet my grandson. He's a disc jockey. And the owner of the station says, oh, really? I'm looking for somebody for my station. Well, I wasn't a disc jockey. My grandfather got the story a little bit mixed up. I was in a contest once. My best buddy, Don Lewis, entered my name in a contest as a joke. And I went through with it as a joke. So all my grandfather heard was disc jockey. So the guy says, you want to come up and talk to me? I said, yeah, sure. So I went up the next day. He said, read this. I'm 18 years old. He said, can you start Monday? Yeah. $32 a week. I took an $8 a week cut. 40 to 32. And I did that for about 4 months. And then I realized I really liked what I was doing. Signing the station on, signing the station off, doing all kinds of programming. So I'm going to go back to Miami. I'm going to take Miami by storm because I'm the best disc jockey in America at age 18 with 4 months experience. So I make a tape one night when I got off the air, a daytime station. Go back to Miami. I make the rounds of all the stations. Nobody will talk to me. I can't get past the receptionist. So my father says, did you go to the R&B station? I said, Dad, they're not going to talk to me. It's an R&B station. He said, you got nothing to lose. So I go in. The receptionist says, what's up, kid? I said, could I talk to the program director about what? I said, about a job. What kind of a job? I said, on the air? She says, how old are you? I said, I'm 18. Oh, you might be in luck. He's only 20. I'll bring him out here. So out comes Arnie Shore, whose father owned the station. And he says, come on back, kid. What you got? I said, I got a tape here. So he listens to it, calls his father in. Father calls the partner in. They excuse themselves for a few minutes, come back, and they said, are you willing to relocate? I said, I've only been as far as Perry, Georgia. Sure. He said, we just bought a station up in Rochester, New York.
There you go.
We're going to take over in July. This is April now. And we're going to put you on here 2 hours a day from 10 to noon to give you more experience. And I'll give you $75 a week.
Wow.
Now, at that 18-year-old kid, that's $1 million.
Yeah.
And you go to Rochester, we'll do the morning show from 6 to 9, and that's how it all began.
So, from there, of course, years later, you find yourself in Cleveland. What was the draw in Cleveland? And wasn't that another big break, you might say, in your career?
Oh, yeah. Rochester was an experience because I was working on another daytime station, but I was doing my own show. I had guys around me. A couple of guys had come from Miami. One African-American guy came with Miami, the program director that I roomed with at the time. And I learned so much. I was there for a year and a half. And then came the offer from Buffalo, WKBW in Buffalo, 50,000 watts. They're going to change formats on the 4th of July. Mary Claire and I drive across to talk to the owner of the station. And the money was double what I was making. But I liked the station I was working for. I liked the mom and pop thing, and I turned it down. And then 5 months later, got an offer from Cleveland. And Cleveland, as you mentioned, really jump-started everything with sports, with theater, with commercials, it was just the best time. 5 years of my life, 1959 through 64. And it was the impact I think we made. The station was number one, not because of me, because we had 7 guys, 6 other guys just as equal that I was, all young guys. I could identify with the kids and contests and promotions and everything. And that's the one that really got me started. Yeah.
Today, a lot of people listen to music on music streaming services.
Right.
Back in those days, when you were at the radio station, did the DJs actually select the songs to play? And tell us how you made those decisions. And was there anyone trying to influence you, record companies, things
yeah.
like that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about that, because I am not familiar with how that used to work in those days.
I did a show called I had the Fabulous 50 Countdown. So every day from 3 to 7, I'd play the 50 of that week. Start at 50 and go down to number 1. Now, I would skip some songs that I chose to skip.
Right.
And every Saturday it would change. Then we had a music format list we put out. You had to go to record stores to get it. We had a music director, and the record promoters would bring the records by and say, here's what we're pushing. What do you think? And he'd make that decision. Then he'd pick out whatever he thought was good and to call all of us together for a meeting and say, what do you guys think? So we'd say, that's terrible. Boom, got rid of it. This is pretty good. We'll keep it. And then he says, do you guys have anything that you want to bring to the table? Yeah, I like this song. Boom. He'd say yes or no. Mm-hmm. So we all had an input, okay? And it was also a time that the disc jockeys and the artists were very close and spent time together. I had Neil Sedaka come in and do a record hop for me. I had 2 record hops every weekend, Friday night and Saturday night, brought to you by Coca-Cola. So I'd go out to a high school. There'd be 1,000 kids there. Coke would give away 6-packs. We'd give away albums. We'd have dance contests, had the red jacket on, hair slicked back, And I mean, it was pretty gross. So I get a call one day from RCA, and they said, we got Neil Sedaka coming to town. He's got a new record, Happy Birthday, Sweet 16. Could you use him for your record op? I said, yeah, sure. All he wants is a piano. He's going to do stuff live.
Wow.
Now, today, that would never happen. Or it'd cost you $5 million for Neil Sedaka.
Right.
Bobby Rydell, Frankie Avalon, Fabian. Neil Diamond played in my basketball team up in New York. How about that?
Wow.
Tony Orlando, the same thing.
Right.
Bobby Vinton. A connection with all the artists, I could take an hour. Leslie Gore, Brenda Lee, all these major stars that you don't find today.
We'll be back with you in just a minute.
20 years ago to the day, the number 1 hit song in both the United States and the United Kingdom was Crazy in Love, sung by Beyoncé and her then boyfriend, Jay-Z. Beyoncé became the first female artist to reign over the singles and albums charts in 2 different countries at the same time. Rolling Stone ultimately declared Crazy in Love to be the greatest song of the 21st century.
So picking up really where Justin was, how radio's changed, right? In the introduction to that wonderful book, which we're going to plug in the show, I promise you, Tony Kornheiser, and he was really talking about sports, but he couldn't talk about all of radio, wrote that essentially there's a special connection when it's at night. You can imagine you're in your car at night, it's you and the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a connection between the radio announcer, DJ, etc., and that person in a way that was more direct and more personal than just about anything that existed then and maybe even exists now.
I don't think it exists now. I don't think you can connect. I don't think outside of a Howard Stern, maybe a Ryan Seacrest. Casey Kasem was a guy that was in Cleveland when I was there. But I don't know why it got away from that. I think what happened, well, basically I do know why. Because all the big corporations bought up all the stations. It used to be you could have no more than 7 stations in a group, not 2 in one market. Now you got 6 or 7 in one market, all competing against each other. Everything is automated. There may be one live person, and there's nobody you can really hook onto. A guy named Joe Esterhaus is a big movie producer. Right. And he put out a cult movie called Telling Lies in America with Marcello Mastroianni was in it. Kevin Bacon played my role in the movie about a disc jockey coming into Cleveland, taking the town by storm, but also taking payola, which I never did, and we couldn't. It was a wonderful movie. And I sent him a note, and he said, have you seen the movie? I said, no. Let me send it to you. Okay. So he sends him the movie. I'm looking at it one night. I'm saying, this is my life story.
Wow.
They used all the lines in the movie that I used. They had the same cliches that I used. I mean, Kevin Bacon, his name is Billy Magic or something like that. And he's talking about traffic time. It's 14 minutes after 5, fender bender, bumper jumper, chrome cracker time. That's what I said.
Line, right?
Yeah. Let me take you girls out there elbow deep in the ballad bowl. I did it all the time. So I call the guy back, Joe Esterhaus, and he says, do you know the influence you were on my career? I said, no. He said, I went to Cathedral Latin High School.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I would get home every day. I couldn't wait to turn on the radio and listen to you. I would call you, you could call, and you talk to me.
Right.
There you go.
And I would say, can you play? And you played it and said, hey, for all the guys at Cathedral Latin listening today, you gave us all shout outs. And you played a charity basketball game against our faculty. You got a brain concussion, a shot to the head. I sent you a card in the hospital. Do you remember? Yeah, sure, Joe. I do. I do.
You're right.
Yeah, whatever you say, Joe. And he said, and you were a major influence in me getting in my business. And you don't realize that, do you? He's chastising
Wow.
me. Okay.
Well, a lot of people probably say, Johnny, that you made Kevin Bacon. That's what I just learned right now, right? So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I remember the first time I went to Cleveland and saw that, and it was like mesmerized, as I'm sure a lot of people are. You're a very humble person. My feeling is when you receive accolades and honors, et cetera, that you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But there you were, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, together with Jimi Hendrix and John Lennon and John Lennon's guitar and all this. Did that kind of put a period on that part of your career where you said, okay, not only did you enjoy it, I had an impact.
I felt there were other guys in our station that should have the same recognition that I had. We had a guy that was on at night named Pete Myers, who did a show called Mad Daddy.
Yep.
And to me, the most creative thing I've ever heard. If he was on the radio today, he would have every single person tuned into him. Everything was in rhyme. He was an actor. He had an acting degree from England. He was older than we were. He was like 10 years older. But he deserves to be in there. Other people that I worked with in New York, in San Francisco, all these people. I think it's a popularity contest, to be honest with you, that if you're around and if you have enough people that are influential in the music business to get you in there because of your disc jockey work, that's the only reason I was recognized, then you're going to get in there. And if the record guys don't like you, then boom, you're not going to get in.
Who's your personal favorite musical artist from any generation or any era? Is there one that you had a chance to interact with that left an impression on you?
I would say probably right now, in my life right now, my favorite all time would be Steve Lawrence. I met him and his wife Edie Gourmet. He's a pop singer. The way he did things, the way he phrased songs, the emotion he put into songs. Loved the guy. Just loved the guy. Another guy that was influential on me would be Bobby Vinton. We were playing his big hit record, Blue on Blue, Roses Are Red. There I've Said It Again. He had hundreds of million sellers. And I was doing one of my first musical theater shows in Cleveland. And he was rehearsing for the next show. He'd never done theater before. And he'd come to our rehearsal and sit there and talk to me. And I think Bobby's maybe a year older than I am. And we compare notes about two young guys. How do you do this? I said, Bobby, I've only done one show. This is my second show. and he was just the kind of guy I could really connect with. Sly Stone, of Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah.
Hung around with Sly all the time in San Francisco.
No kidding.
And we had this great idea to put on a TV show called Salt and Pepper. Sly Stone, Johnny Holliday, in 1967, 68, way before its time. And I remember one time we went to the Mark Hopkins Hotel to sit down and have lunch and talk about it. I show up in my khaki pants, button-down shirt, hair parted one side. Here's Sly, draped with chains, the big afro, the dark glasses, And they wouldn't wait on us. They avoided us like the plague.
Wow.
And I finally said to a wait, could we get some service over here? Yeah, we'll be there in a few minutes. And finally, after waiting another 10, 15 minutes, I said to Sly, let's get out of here. We don't need this stuff.
Yeah.
Never forget that. And people had no idea what was underneath all that for Sly Stone.
Mm-mm.
The nicest guy you'd ever want to meet.
So I know that you've been recognized for your talent as a DJ. You also have other musical talents on the stage. And as a singer, I remember reading that you actually sung with the United States Air Force Band, the Navy Band, I assume the Army too. I think you did all the services.
Navy, yep.
That is really cool. How did you feel doing that? I mean, of all the things you had already done, now you're singing with the U.S. Air Force Choir, right? I mean, how cool is that?
I went to rehearse with the Air Force Band at Boulding Air Force Base. I had done Music Man at Harlequin Dinner Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that the charts musically for the orchestrations of Music Man are different than the Broadway show. So we're going to rehearse Trouble, okay? So I get over there at Boulding Air Force Base, first rehearsal, Colonel Arnold Gabriel, God rest his soul, wonderful man. And there's probably, the orchestra is 35, 40 pieces with the singing sergeants. And he said, okay, you ready? I said, yeah, sure. So he kicks into the music, and I'm just standing there. And went right past the time I was supposed to come in. Because I was admiring and listening. And I said, Colonel Gabriel, is this the same version that I did? I don't think this is the same. Well, it wasn't. So we had to kind of revamp everything. And the first show we did was on the west steps of the Capitol in the summer concert series. And all these people sitting on the steps going up the Capitol. And here I am with the Air Force Band behind me. Wow. You talk about a thrill. And then the Navy Band with Joe Phillips at the sail loft, a salute to some great composer. And I narrated all that. And then the Army Band and the Marine, I did them all. And they were just, it's probably the biggest thrills of my life to be with these. And this is all they do. They're all musicians, and they are fabulous.
I can tell you, Kevin Bacon couldn't have done that. Just throwing that into this
I can't
interview.
play the guitar
I don't
like
think
he
he
does
could have
either,
done that.
believe me.
You were a successful DJ, and obviously you had relationships with others. What is the secret to be a successful DJ in that era? What was it that made some of those DJs so special?
Well, I work for Metro Media, which owned a lot of stations around the country. And John Kluge was the head of Metro Media. And we had to sign affidavits saying that we would never, ever accept any money for playing records. We would never cross the line and use foul language. It was automatic dismissal. And I think the one thing that, if I can point at, is I never did anything off color, never did anything suggestive. You try to set a good example for kids and never talk down to them, and was always available for them. They could call our station, talk to any of us on the air or off the air. Going to all the schools that I went to around Northern Ohio, and thousands of kids would come out. And then I realized that I could slide off into theater. That's a whole different audience going to see you when I started doing theater in Cleveland. You can slide off into sports, which we'll talk about later on, and all that from the base of being a disc jockey.
Right.
I wouldn't go back and change anything at all. Being in New York at 25 years of age, the #1 market, afternoon drive time, you can't beat it. Then what I went through in San Francisco with the change of music and having Grace Slick and the Jefferson Airplane sitting next to me for 4 hours.
Wow.
Janis Joplin, Big Brother, the Holding Company, Moby Grape, the Beau Brummels, Harry Chapin. I mean, all these people, you can't put a price tag on what that was like.
Yeah.
So you said San Francisco. Didn't you at one point introduce the Beatles at Candlestick Park?
Gene Nelson and myself, another coworker of mine at KYA, were the host of the last Beatles concert. Nobody knew it was going to be the last Beatles concert. And it was a foggy night in San Francisco, August of 1966. The most expensive ticket was $6.50.
Wow.
That's $6.50.
Yeah, exactly. $4.50, $5.50, $6.50.
Right.
25,000 people show up. Not even capacity. The wind is blowing out, which the promoters never, knew it was going to happen. And it was just like I'm sitting with you guys right now talking with John, Paul, George, Ringo. I'd met them in New York, nice guys. They cut promos for us that they ran, and so I knew them, not well, but they knew me and I knew them. And just 4 nice guys. And time to having Cokes and crackers and sandwiches, and okay, time to go. They did about 40 minutes, I guess. I think on the bill was Bobby Hebb and the Ronettes and the Circle and a group called the Remains, a local group from San Francisco. Did the show, got in the armored car, went to the airport, gone. Last time ever together as one group.
Wow, remarkable.
Yeah. And never took a picture. Never got anything written down from any one of those guys. Never had a picture taken with any of them. I wasn't into that kind of stuff. And never thought about it. Now, I wish it'd be worth like $2 or something.
Well, I've got one remedy for that. Photoshop. We got that covered. Okay.
We'll make the picture.
We'll make the picture. Before we break, I want to just ask you one question about Mary Claire, your wife. Yes, who has been by your side through almost all of this, right? Short of the record-holding days. I think that was probably preceded her. How important has it been that you've had her and she's had you together for all these years through all the things that you've experienced in your career as well as in your life?
Guys say this all the time, I wouldn't be here without my wife. And in my case, that's extremely true. Basically, I think she is responsible for bringing up 3 wonderful daughters, Kelly, Tracy, Maura, grandmother for 11 grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. And during those days, the kids were growing up, I was gone a lot. I was doing games on the road. I was here, I was there. I was out late at night playing basketball at charity games, and she did all the heavy lifting. I was 20 when we got married. She was 18. How many marriages of a 20-year-old, 18-year-old have got a chance to succeed? None. I mean, nobody gave us a shot.
Right.
But I think the thing that really helped us, we got married in Miami. We took the all-night flight to Rochester, New York, 7 hours, prop, the old Eastern Airlines, okay? And we get off, we go to our apartment, open the door, and I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "Oh my, this is gorgeous, absolutely, look at this." Big hug. I have an army cot up against the wall.
You have the army cot.
I have the army cot in the living room with 2 throw pillows. I said, "Let's check out the kitchen." We go in, she goes, "Oh my God, this is gorgeous." A card table with 2 chairs that didn't match. And then we go to the bedroom, and I said, like this, "Oh my God, this is gorgeous." Her father was in the furniture business, had given us a beautiful bedroom set at his price.
At his price.
Yeah, cost.
Right.
So we only had each other. If we had a problem,
Right.
we couldn't go home to mom and dad. You know, we're in Rochester, New York.
Right.
We had to figure it out. And I think that really had a lot to do. And we always laughed a lot. We always made sure the girls were having dinner with us when they would come home from school. And I was doing a morning show on radio, so I wasn't there every morning, but she was. So she did all the major stuff. And without her, there's no way. And then when I had some medical problems, a plane crash and some other minor things, I mean, she's right there. She's right there. And if she's not there, there's no way I'm here.
In the next episode of the Johnny Holliday story, we get to another staple of the American experience, sports. Don't miss future episodes by following us on Apple, Spotify, or other podcast platforms, or go to the YouTube channel where you can subscribe for free.